This isn't really a spoiler because I haven't read I haven't played the visual novel that Steins Gate is based on, but I'm betting 550% that the person that they think is Daru's wife is like the secret agent that came to kill them. I 500% bet that. I don't even think that's a super huge like unsafe bet. I'm gonna just bet that. Okay? Yeah. Okay. Just that. Okay. Moving on. And another thing, this whole song side plot bullshit. I bet it's fucking the red-haired Kurisu, whatever the fuck. That she's the one who made it. I swear to God. Not a conspiracy theory, that's what I'm gonna say. Okay. On to the next clip. It's a fucking time loop. It's a time loop. He demailed himself so he wouldn't have to do all the time machine shit to fix it. He figured out the only way to avoid the whole thing was to demail himself all the way in middle school. And he fucked it up. You fucked it up, you stupid piece of shit. Okay, that's rant 3. The episode's finally over, and from that sentence you can probably tell what I thought of it. I don't know, Steins Gate Zero just seems like it's completely lost its way. Like, by episode 12 in Steins Gate, I think the inciting incident had already happened, and he was already like halfway through fixing it in episode 12 of Steins Gate. I think this is supposed to be a 25 episode show. I'm not sure exactly, but I think that's what it is. We're like halfway through. And not much has happened, you know? There's been that one attack which he completely fixed in like one episode. There's been a whole AI thing. But definitely disappointed so far with this. Yeah, there's not even that much to say. It's just kind of disappointing. Like, that whole episode was completely pointless. Just to make one connection, they spent a whole episode. So I don't know if it's even worth watching it anymore. I might just wait until the whole thing's out and then watch it all together. That seems to be a better idea for most of these anime, let's be honest. Another anime I wanted to talk about, but forgot to. I did a whole bunch of tweets about it yesterday. Maybe if I'm not lazy, I'll put them up when I'm editing this. Chances are not. But To Be Heroine, or To Be Heroine, or whatever the fuck, however you say it. I thought that was one of the more unique anime offerings we've had in the past couple of seasons. Maybe even the past year, probably. And first of all, it's hilarious, right? It's like really funny. The first couple episodes, when you see that baby in the golden underwear and shit, you're like, what the fuck is this show? And that's like the reigning opinion on this show has been like, what the fuck is this show? What are they trying to do? Like, half the show is in Chinese, which I think is actually really cool because China is not one of the places we get a lot of animated media from. Maybe they have their own animated media that we just don't see, but as a person who lives in the West, China is not really a place we get a real like ground level insight into, except when people go there to travel and make vlogs about, which isn't really the authentic experience, I would say, not the like native experience that you get. So it's really nice to see that, and especially the way they showed her family like living in this town where the industrial jobs, like they completely lost all the jobs because this factory moved away or some shit, which you can relate to kind of, like that's kind of a thing you can relate to as like a normal person. You can be like, hey, whatever, and it's like fucked up pollution and all that shit. That being said, until episode 4, it was amazing. 4.5 I skipped because it was a recap episode or whatever. I didn't watch that. So I went from 4 to 5, and I watched it all together. I think that's important to point out, because if you're watching it week to week, I don't think it has nearly as much impact as watching it all together, right? So I heard that some people liked it, so I went to check it out, and I watched 5 episodes in a row yesterday, maybe, or day before. And it was really good. I like all kinds of weird shit, right? Occultic 9 was one of my favorite shows of that season. So that should tell you what my like weird ass taste is. But I watched the show and it was really good. Like the Chinese kind of freaked me out at first. I was like, hey, is this whole show going to be in Chinese? And of course, when they put the Chinese up, they have to put the Japanese and the English subtitles up. And I don't know like the whole circumstances of how this show got made. But that would be really interesting to look at, like how this show became a thing in the first place. Especially if it was made in China, it's pretty critical of like the whole like Chinese expand at all costs kind of thought process, which I don't think is something the Chinese government tolerates. So I'll be interested to know if like a bunch of Chinese animators and writers left China to make this in Japan and then released it in Japan, or if they just made it in China. I haven't heard of that studio before, so maybe they made it in China. It could be a whole Chinese studio. In any case, it's a really interesting show, and it's like a whole isekai thing, but it's like a twist. And I think the revelation at the end is going to be that she never even left the world and she was just hallucinating or some shit. But they made, which in a way is kind of the opposite of the point of the whole isekai genre, is to have a world where you can just escape your real world and like live your fantasies in this other world. And Konosuba kind of turned this back a little bit by like giving him no powers or nothing, and he's just a normal person in that world. But in this, she has powers, but those powers are like based on little anecdotal, like revealing stories from her real life, which is not something that happens very often. And it like uses the isekai whole plot as a way to tell her backstory, which is something we don't see at all. And I thought it was really creative the way they did that, and the way they cut back and forth between the Japanese and the Chinese was really cool, because the Chinese is like, that's her real life, and all the scenes from her life are shown in Chinese, and then the show, like, the fantastical element is shown in Japanese, which, if you think about it, right, for a person living in China, and they see all this anime coming from Japan, they kind of like, when they thinking about Japan, they think about all these fantastical elements, right? So for her, as a Chinese person, she sees, like, all this magical girl stuff, isekai stuff, as Japanese inherently, just because that's the only place she's seen it, because it's an anime. Where else is it, really? So when she goes into that world and she does her magical girl stuff, she goes into Japanese, which I think is pretty natural and pretty creative. Really. What else? The fucking taking off clothes to... That's like a whole metaphor. There's multiple metaphors at work here, right? And I don't really want to go into the episode 5 plot twist. I think this is a 6-episode show. I don't know if I'm right, but I think it's a 6-episode show. And I think that's one of the more compelling things about 6-episode shows is 6 episodes is like 2 hours, right? Just under 2 hours if you take out the OP and the ED. It's just under 2 hours. And I think that's like the perfect length for a certain genre of anime where you can like, it's movie length. So you could back-to-back it as a movie, technically. And I think they flow into each other well enough that you could just watch it all in one go. So I hope when this is done, they release a whole version where it's just 6 episodes in a row, but like back-to-back, and you can watch it like a movie, like a JoJo movie, right? I think that would be a good way to watch it, too. That's why I'm glad that I watched it all back-to-back. Now I just have to wait 1 week for the 6th episode to come out. But I might be completely wrong, and it could be a 12-episode show, so I don't know. I hope it's a 6-episode show, because if they drag the rest of this plot out over 12 episodes, I'm going to get really pissed. Okay, it's about episode 5. Episode 5 is kind of when I got a little bit let down, I'm going to be honest, because until episode 4, the shit was amazing. It went from point to point to point, just revealing all her backstory and all the shit that she's had to deal with. When we first see her, we just see her as like a kind of disillusioned youth, which is exactly what the isekai genre is all about. Disillusioned youth is what the isekai genre like makes its money off of, right? Disillusioned youth. And I think that first animation when they showed her like with the mouth like turning into data and shit like that, I thought that was super creative. But when she goes into the world, she has more agency, and she like takes on the world by herself, along with the golden underwear baby, who's her friend and the other baby or whatever. And their whole relationship is like a metaphor, and he betrays her at the end or whatever. And then like they link it back a generation, and that's what I have a problem with. That's some Charlotte level, like sticking it in right at the end level bullshit, because they fucking took that whole plot, they put it in right at the end. Like they could have hinted at it at least, like shown her parents like look similar to each other, or like that this dude's dad looks similar to him, and we could read into that, and we could go, hey, maybe this is also like another repetition of what happened earlier, because they're trying to show that it's happened like 3 generations now, or 2 generations now. It happened with their parents, and it happened with them. But the point is, when you show a whole episode about just their parents, we don't know their parents at all, because they haven't shown them before for the past 4 episodes, and they just stick them in episode 5 and be like, hey, care about this person's dad who died. I'm like, I don't care. You just showed me him, and he dies like 5 seconds later. How can I possibly care about him? Like, they should have done some more build-up for that. But other than that, I think the show is really good. Except for that, of course. Just like Charlotte. Charlotte, I think the first 12 episodes of that show are really good, and they fucking ruined it in episode 13. I feel like I wish I just had never seen episode 13. I could just watch 12 episodes, I would have been happy, right? So yeah, those are my thoughts on To Be Heroine. Even though I initially started to give my thoughts on Steins Gate episode 12. Okay, I'll probably be back with some other bullshit in the next clip. Fucking forgot to press record like a dumbass. Okay, take 2. Part 3 of this vlog. Part 3 is gonna be, I guess, part 2. Part 3? Part 2 is To Be Heroine, so this is part 3. So part 3 is gonna be about YouTube, as usual. Speaking of YouTube, I actually put out my first video in over a year. because I'm an inconsistent son of a bitch. I'll link it in the description if you haven't watched it already. I don't see how you would have seen this vlog before you saw that shit. This is my side channel. Nobody's fucking subscribed to this. But in case you see this before you see that, just because vlogs are more search engine optimized for some stupid ass reason, I'll link it in the description. So watch that. That being said, plug over. Okay, so YouTube is something that I've been thinking about this whole year. Like every year, because YouTube is something I concern myself with for really no reason, because I don't even do that much YouTube, right? I like to do more, obviously, but I still am like a writer first and foremost. I just sometimes like to expand my writing to things not fictional, and kind of do like the video I did recently is a good example of this, I think, but for me, not for like a good example in general. So the thing that I was thinking about recently with YouTube is there's been this huge push since YouTube switched from views to watch time, which I think was kind of a death blow to the creators who spend a lot of time making short amounts of content, just because you can't really get the amount of views that you need with that. Because people have such a short memory that if they forget that you exist and you only put stuff out like once every 2 weeks or whatever, the chances are they're just going to forget that you even exist, and then they'll just not watch whatever you put or won't even go to their sub feed, because YouTube, according to people who know more about this than me, YouTube like tests. Oh my god, it's fucking dark as shit. Why did I walk there? My whole house is like completely pitch black. YouTube apparently tests your videos with 10% of your subscriber base before it even recommends it to anyone else. So if 10% of your subscribers don't watch it, or they've just, you know, somehow it just doesn't even make it to them or whatever, the point is it's not going to get out to the wider audience unless it's supremely search engine optimized, and maybe not even then, you know. I do know some people get more views from their subscribers than others, but hey, that's something you have to deal with. But the point that I was trying to make is a lot of people in 2018 are trying to focus on the quality of their content versus the quantity of their content. Just because there are so many channels that do quantity so well, it's basically impossible to compete with them, right? They're like news shows that put out 2 videos a day sometimes. You can't, if you're making like something that requires more structure and scripting at all, if you need any scripting at all, you're completely fucked, because you can't put out 2 videos in a day unless you're just summarizing things, and that's what the news shows do, right? If you need to do some kind of analysis at all, you can't write a long enough video to get enough watch time twice a day. I don't think so. I think it's pretty much impossible to do that. Or you'd have to be some kind of madman or have like a crazy writing staff. And the amount of effort that goes into editing these videos is like also way more than a news video. A news video, you just have to say what you think, and that's usually fine. You don't even have to say what you think, you just have to say what the information is. You're just conveying information. It's like watching TV. Instead of CNN, people like flip on whatever news show. So people are focusing on their content more, like the quality, because if you can't compete quantity-wise, you have to compete quality-wise, otherwise you're fucked and nobody's gonna watch any of your shit, right? So a lot of the channels that I follow, maybe it's just burnout, I don't know. Like one of the examples that I wanted to say is Funhouse. They were doing insane amounts of videos last year. They were doing like 13, 14 videos a week sometimes. And that's kind of crazy, first of all, that they even decided that they should do that, or that was a good idea to do. But I guess they were just trying to improve their subscriber count. I have not watched any of their videos in a long time, so I can't say whether it worked or not. I'm guessing it did. Maybe they pushed up to 2 million. Who knows? They were stuck at 900K for a long time. But maybe they pushed past it. Who knows? The point is, the start of this year, they made an announcement that they're going to focus more on the quality of their content, because I guess the way to retain viewership is it's to impress people with the quality versus how many videos you put out, right? It's hard to advertise yourself or your channel as a whole if you're just putting out more content than the next guy, because what if none of it's good, right? The more quantity you put out, you no matter what you think, you have to sacrifice on quality. It's just something that happens. Like there will be little things in the video that like rub on you and be like, oh hey, how come I didn't fix that, when you could have fixed it if you had like 12 hours more of time to do it. But if you have a strict schedule, like a daily release or something, you don't really have much time. And this is coming from a dude who did like a month and a half of daily Let's Plays last year, right? And I really, first of all, I couldn't really deal with that, just because I'm part of the Let's Play style person who like talks a lot during the whole thing, and it kind of like my throat started hurting at some points because I was doing the 30-45 minutes of constant like reacting every day. So the point, what I was trying to say is, why are these channels focusing on their quality? And the comparison that I want to make that I think is imperative here is YouTube and Netflix. I recently listened to a TED Talk where this person interviewed the CEO of Netflix, Reed Hastings, and they were talking about his content strategy, or the way that he started thinking about how to make Netflix a household name, right? Because in 2008 or whatever it was, when they first started transitioning from sending DVDs by mail to becoming a streaming service, long time ago, I know, but bear with me. They were trying to get a marquee series, which was House of Cards. They didn't have the production budget at the time, right? And House of Cards first season production budget, I think, was like 150 or 200 million dollars, which is a lot, granted, but they're spending $8 billion in content, original content, this year alone, right? Which is way more. And if you think about like online media, the first and last name usually is Netflix. Netflix and YouTube, those are the two things you think of when you think video online. And Netflix is unique because it's not ad-based at all, right? So they grow purely based on their subscriber number, which has grown exponentially recently. Now, it used to be on YouTube that used to be a similar proposal to Netflix. When you're a channel on YouTube, you want to increase your sub count as much as possible, because the more subs you have, the more views you get, because all the videos used to go to the sub feeds and people used to watch the videos because there weren't as many channels that they were subscribed to. Now, over time, the number of channels that are like at a certain level of quality with worth a certain number of subs has gone up. So that means there's more competition, more people competing for my watch time, right? So what that means is I probably won't watch as many videos from the same person. So what does that mean? It means every single person you have on your subscriber list is worth less to you, because they won't watch all your videos, or all your videos might not even make it to their sub feed anyway. So what does that mean in 2018, right? Going back to the Netflix analogy. Netflix, Reed Hastings says, is a curated service. What does that mean? They curate content. They don't just give you all the stuff. They pick and choose the stuff, and they make it visible to you if they think you'll like it. Now, YouTube kind of does this with their YouTube algorithm, but they do it on a less granular scale, right? And this is one of the things that I wanted to talk about. As someone who publishes videos to YouTube, you'll know that if you go to the advanced settings of the publish screen or whatever, I don't know what to call it, the upload screen, there's an advanced settings tab, and in that there's a category which has like 5 categories, right? Like gaming, people and blogs, travel, like only like 4 or 5 categories. And if you know about Netflix's secret little URL codes, you know that Netflix has such a granular like separation of their content that you can search for like anime movies made in the 80s, and there will be like a number code for that. If you put it at the end of the Netflix URL, it'll take you to the screen of all the anime movies made in the 80s that they have. Now, why is that useful? Well, it's useful because if you as a viewer know exactly what you want to watch, and you might have many interests, right? So YouTube, the algorithm will suggest you like a ton of different stuff, like across all your interests. And they have changed it a little bit more recently, where if you watch like 3 videos about the same subject, they'll show you those videos for like the next 2 days, just because they know you're like looking for that. But in general, it's more like they recommend stuff to you based on like long-term trends. Whereas Netflix is such a curated service, they only have so many shows on the platform that they can show you the best of what's available, right? So one of the things that I end up looking for is like gear reviews, like for microphones and cameras and stuff like that. Just because, one, I'm a gearhead, I like electronics. I mean, who doesn't? The industry will tell you that everyone does, because we all buy electronics, let's be honest. So a lot of the stuff that I end up searching for is not the flagship stuff, because I'm broke as fuck. So the stuff that I end up searching for is like the low-end stuff. And the low-end stuff never gets any like big videos made about it, just because it's low-end stuff. Like, this would be an example, like everyone just makes a review on the Lamborghini and no one makes a review of the Honda Fit or whatever it was, right? But that's not the case. And the channels that are making videos about this low-end stuff are really bad. So the floor is still really low, but somehow there's still a ton of competition for your eyeball, right? So this is my suggestion. I've been rambling for a bit, but I've come back to the main stem now. This is my suggestion. I think YouTube should try to get more curated. Now that seems like a super obvious suggestion at first, but hear me out, okay? So Netflix like puts so much money into their content, whereas YouTube puts no money into their content, right? They only share AdSense. So they only pay the people who are already being watched. The point behind that is, if you're not investing actively to improve your content, you're just leaving it up to the creators to improve themselves. But we've reached a stage where the YouTube like content development has plateaued more or less, because people don't really know what they want different, right? They just want to consume the content. They're okay with whatever is being put out. So the people who are putting them out are being rewarded for putting out the videos that people want to see, but it's not really been a huge improvement or sea change in the way that videos are being made. Like the higher production quality stuff is not really coming through. And I know there are like podcasts which use like Canon C100 cameras and shit like that. H3 podcast I'm talking about. But they're still like doing the same format. They're just doing it slightly differently, right? They just copied the Joe Rogan format. They're just doing it with different people. Is that really like the way to go in the future? They're just pigeonholing themselves into a thing. Now, one of the big categories that's missing almost entirely from YouTube is like long form narrative content. Is non-existent on YouTube. You have to go completely to Netflix for that. And maybe YouTube are making a creative decision here where like, we don't want to compete with Netflix, but I'd say Netflix, if you're not going to compete with Netflix, Netflix is going to come and eat your lunch, right? They're out to do that. They're already like, I don't know if YouTube makes more money than Netflix. I don't think so. I think Netflix makes more money because they have a solid income base. And the thing that people subscribe to Netflix for is, one, it's easy to use. Two, there's a large amount of content, but also the content that they have on there is stuff that people want to see and that has an adequate amount of quality. Why does Prime Video suck? Think about that. I'm an Amazon Prime subscriber because I get a student Prime discount. But Prime Video sucks ass. It's so bad. It's so bad it's not even usable. And all the movies that get added on there are fucking 70s porno movies. I swear to God, I'm not lying about this. Go check it out. If you're a Prime subscriber, you've probably never even looked at Prime Video. And the only thing I watch on Prime Video is the Grand Tour. Once a year for 10 weeks, I watch the and the remaining 42 weeks out of the year, I don't give a fuck about Prime Video. Prime Video's ass. Why? They have a ton of shows. They have a lot of shit, and all of it's bad. They have like Goliath, which nobody watches, and they have fucking Grand Tour, and then that's it. I think they have the Big Six. So they go with Netflix to Sundance and all these movie festivals, and they try to buy all the indie movies that everyone wants to watch. But I feel really bad for the people who get bought by Amazon, who agree to get bought out by Amazon, because nobody fucking watches that shit. It's just the truth. Nobody watches Amazon Prime Video. Prime Video is like the added blip on the end on the cherry. It's like a fleck on. It's like a flick of chocolate on top of the cherry on top of the sundae. That's Prime, right? Nobody really cares about Prime Video. So it's not really about quantity, because if you look at it, I bet Prime Video has about as much shit as Netflix does, and Netflix doesn't have everything. People are talking about stuff leaving Netflix all the time, right? So Netflix is actively removing or losing the license to stuff in every single country. But they have enough shit, enough good shit to keep you watching stuff. And they keep adding new stuff. And they have these seasons, like these marquee shows that come out every year that people stay subscribed for throughout the year. That's what YouTube doesn't have. They don't have any marquee content at all. And they're not involved in content development whatsoever. YouTube Red was a complete failure, and we all know that. Nobody fucking watched Scare PewDiePie, and it went so badly, they fucking canceled YouTube Red completely. And now we have two confusing ass things which nobody gives a fuck about. I don't know why you would want YouTube Music when you could just get Google Play Music. Is it included? It might be included, but why would you get YouTube Premium? Or why would you get YouTube Music? You could just get Google Play Music, and YouTube Music comes with it, just like YouTube Red came with Google Play Music before too. So just have Google Play Music, and you'll already be subscribed to every stupid ass thing that Google comes up with, right? It doesn't even make sense half the time. So the point that I'm trying to make is YouTube need to get actively involved with content development. Content development is like a huge department in most TV studios. I'm gonna stop walking. Did a bunch of exercise today. I'm like weirdly out of breath. Content development is like a huge department in most studios. If you listen to Harmontown or Dan Harmon talk about anything, you'll know that. Focus? Okay. He'll know that he gets into a lot of content development discussions with a lot of studios because he has an animation studio, right? So he gets into a lot of show development shows because TV studios are actively looking to make new good shows. That's what they're trying to do because that's where their bread is buttered. When they make a new good show, they get more money and they know it. That's how it works. YouTube does none of that fucking shit. They don't at all get involved in the creative department at all, which makes no sense to me. They know like what the top 200, top 300, top 400 channels are view count wise. They should look into going and expanding the capabilities of people who are in that top view count, because if you do that, or even like collaborate, get Corridor Digital to make a movie that's written by fucking Nerdwriter or some shit. Oh, what the people would watch the shit out of that. Fucking combined, they have like 15 million. No, I'm just kidding. I'm making that number up. They probably have like 9 million subscribers, right? And the watch time you get won't be great, but fucking focus. Okay, the watch time you get won't be as good as like just putting out 10 fucking videos about the news that day, but fuck, you get like a name brand recognition and you get considered to be a serious platform for more expensive content. Like YouTube right now is a dumping ground, right? They're like rare gems amongst the sea of like garbage. That's what YouTube is by and large, is just complete shit mostly, and then in between there's good shit, and then that good shit just gets like washed up in this sea of shit, and they have to compete watch time wise to make any kind of serious money on YouTube. And I don't even think the majority of channels on YouTube should be making money, to be honest, including me. I think if you're in the ad revenue game, just be in the ad revenue game. But YouTube should introduce like a side hustle, right? They should have a side hustle where they give creators money, make them sign a contract or whatever. Just call them in for contract discussions, YouTube. You can do that. You fucking just say they're your employee. You won't get sued or whatever. I know you're allergic to saying people are your employee, YouTube, but it's fine, okay? So call people in, call creators in, maybe even like smaller creators, because they're not going to make that much shit. And then you will get a good publicity boost because like YouTube is boosting smaller creators, because the whole backlash for the past 2 years has been YouTube doesn't give a shit about smaller creators. That's why the whole 1,000 subscriber thing became such a huge deal, because it came off as YouTube shitting on the small guy again. Because YouTube historically has not really been known for supporting smaller creators, right? They've done that over and over again, where they just made it harder and harder for smaller channels to survive. They introduced that sponsor thing, so I guess you can make money, but you only get half of the sponsoring price. So why don't you just ask them to patron you? You get at least 97% of what they give you. 95? I don't know what the cut is, but the point is, YouTube need to be more like Netflix, and Netflix can't be more like YouTube. See, that's where you have the competitive edge. Netflix, nobody likes weekly shows on Netflix. The fucking Joel McHale show, it went weekly for a while, but now they're going to make a whole season and then release it at the same time, which makes no sense to me, but that's what they're going to do. I don't think that show's going to last very long. Periodically released content does not do well on Netflix, but it does do well on YouTube. So YouTube can do something that Netflix can't, but now they have the chance to do, or they're in a position to compete with Netflix, at least for the next little bit, right? There's going to be a time maybe in the future when Netflix just completely takes over everything. We don't know when that day will be, but it could happen any day now. So fucking YouTube, get on it. I don't know why you're lagging for no reason. Just when you have a platform this big and you're not actively involved in increasing the quality of your content. This is something I mentioned in Dreamtime 1. Don't watch that. Just listen to what I say now. I was like, a lot of creators just can't get like fucking quality gear to make their shit. Like this camera that I'm shooting on didn't cost that much money. It's like $150. It's not a lot. It's a DSLR. It's pretty good. Really, you only need this level of camera to even make a movie. I could make a fucking movie on this thing. I'm not going to. That's a whole nother thing. Like you could make a whole movie on this camera. It's not that much. Why don't YouTube like partner up with the hardware company and be like, hey, when you reach this subscriber count, or like they need, first of all, I'm gonna sit down because I'm fucking angry again. And we're back. So what I was saying is I get fucking angry about YouTube whenever I think about this, because they just sit on their ass and they do nothing all day. Every single time, every single year, right? This is for people who don't really know much about the traditional TV industry, I guess. I listen to so much TV people, so many TV people talk about their TV jobs that I fucking know way too much about this. So every year, every single huge cable network develops new shows. They ask people to write pilots for shows, and they either pick them up or they don't based on how they test with the audience. It blows my mind that YouTube are not doing this. Why are there not YouTube originals? And there are, I grant you that, but they are not in the way that, they're not in the form that people have shown that they prefer to watch. Westworld is being watched the fucking shit out of right now, okay? The Westworld season finale, I guarantee you, had more viewers than a lot of YouTube does. And I get it, you're trying to promote openness and stuff, but why don't you make it like an upwards ladder instead of like a flat plane? When you're on YouTube and you upload for the first time, you have the same capabilities that any YouTuber has, regardless how big they are, which is fine, which is like the great equalizer or whatever you want to say, and that's great. But let's think about that for a second. That means you're doing absolutely nothing to promote the bigger YouTubers, or you're doing the same amount to promote the huge YouTubers that already have proven that they make you a lot of money, as compared to fucking me who has 100 and whatever the fuck subscribers and gets no views. You're doing the same amount. How is that justifiable, YouTube? Okay, I'm just addressing YouTube as like directly. I'm talking directly to YouTube because it's one blob that exists up there that I'm addressing right now. So the point is, get involved. They have a YouTube makerspace in LA. That's fine. LA's fine. Make it in other places. Put one in New York. Put one in Chicago. Put one in every major city. Make it like a hub for creativeness, right? Or for creative people to come together and make shit. Because really that's where you're making your money, is by making marquee content. Like Casey Neistat is one channel that gets so many fucking views, and he came up with 368, which is fine. That's all great. He has some resources, not a lot, but some. YouTube has like way more money than he does. And they were sitting on the ball for 10 years since they made their platform and since it became so popular. YouTube has gotten more popular recently, but for the past 6 years, it's been more or less the premier YouTube online video space. So he came up with this idea, and he's trying to make it a reality by making like a creator space for creators to come together. And he's going to pick the creators that come into that. Why don't you do that, YouTube? Why don't you do that, YouTube? Make a space. You have billions of dollars, and I don't know how much it costs to fucking have a YouTube or a video site that lets anyone upload however much they want, and I know that's a problem, and I don't think you should change that. But maybe make it so that the lower creators can't upload like 250 hours of random shit if you want to lower your costs a lot, okay? Because you're already not paying them, so it's fine. What was I saying? Yes, make a creative space in various cities and promote like a local collaborative environment, because people are watching all kinds of shit now, right? And even if this stuff doesn't increase your watch time, maybe it'll increase the quality of your content, really. This will be your content development strategy. Why the fuck is it not focusing? Okay. This will be your content development strategy. You're just spending the bare minimum amount of money that you need to get people to go and work together and like start this competitive drive in creators. Because really that's what made movies so good. Movies are pretty good, much better than the average YouTube video, I would say. The average movie that you see in a theater, regardless of how bad you think it is like exponentially better than the average YouTube video. Just in the amount of time it took to make, the amount of thought that went into it, and also the resources. You have to take into account that as well. But mostly, the quality is much higher. You can't debate that. Okay, so you have all these screenwriters competing to get their scripts read, and the best come to the top, and then they get picked up and made into a movie. YouTube, start that shit for yourself. Instead of encouraging creators to go out and just get more people, just let them focus on making their own shit. Because if they focus on making their own shit, chances are they'll make some good shit, and you can market that. Be like, hey, this person came from YouTube. That's like the biggest draw I've ever heard of in my life. A lot of the things that people talk about now about Donald Glover, they also mention that he used to post YouTube videos at one point. About Andy Samberg, Lonely Island, that he used to post YouTube videos at some point, right? And they're amazingly talented people. And they came from YouTube because YouTube offered them the platform to get their work out there. But YouTube isn't really about getting your work out there anymore. YouTube is about cultivating and creating an audience regardless of what your work is like, which is not what it should be. You should encourage people to put more work into their videos than just put out more videos. I said that before already, but YouTube really needs to push that, because if you're not doing that, you're standing still. You're just letting people develop for themselves, which is something Digibro mentioned in his episode 4 of the Gecko Estate, which I go back and watch all the time. He talked about how the creators, or no, not episode 4, episode 3, my bad. Episode 3 of the Gecko Estate, which I'll link below also. He talked about how the creators are letting YouTube down because they have stagnated completely. And that's a direct result of this YouTube being completely laissez-faire, hands-off in their way they treat their creators, which is fine. It could be anything. You could give like a premium AdSense cut for people who put more, who work on creating marquee content for you. Or you could just pay them. Just do that. They're not going to make any AdSense money. You could have a few like licensed writers, a few licensed showmakers or something, and you could have your own original content. And you can be like, oh, hey, that competes with the people on your platform. It doesn't really compete with the people on your platform because it's not like non-YouTube people making it. You're not bringing in Kevin Hart, which he has a YouTube channel already, by the way, which is promoted super heavily. You've probably watched some videos on LOL Network. He has a YouTube production deal. I'm not talking about that. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like a Game of Thrones type. It doesn't have to be that high budget. It doesn't have to be like huge fantasy, but fucking focus on my face. It doesn't have to be super high fantasy budget like Wars and like Battle of the Bastard level shit. It doesn't have to be that. You could still have a narrative series that comes out weekly that encourages people to stay on the platform, right? And there's no competition to YouTube. That's why they're so complacent in the first place. And they introduced all these like Twitch features into YouTube now, but if you're just copying what Twitch does, Twitch is a completely different animal. Twitch is all about like connecting with people, like live connecting with people. YouTube isn't about that really. YouTube has feedback in the same way that movies have feedback, in that you put out the work, it's already done. The creators, the fans get no input on what is being made. They just see the product and then they comment on it. Whereas Twitch, you're actively interacting with the person as they're doing it, right? So you change what's happening. YouTube can't do that. And YouTube streaming is completely different. So why are you trying to push YouTube is here, Twitch is here with the like live interaction. Why are you trying to move towards Twitch? Why don't you go this way? Why don't you utilize what you have, which is like instant feedback, instant interaction with the fans? Why don't you take that and move it towards move the quality level towards where Netflix and stuff are at, right? Because on one side, you have so many new TV shows being made, and none of them are being made on Netflix. They're being all made on other platforms, and it's not like Netflix doesn't have money to do that shit. I think people would embrace like a show that was made by people on YouTube, but resembles more the stuff that they see on Netflix or stuff like that. I think people would embrace that, right? As long as it's not memey. I think the Vsauce show got a lot of traction, from what I've seen anyway. I don't remember what it was called, but he went out and like did a whole not Mythbusters, kind of like Joe Rogan questions everything type show, and I think that went kind of well. It's just the YouTube, like the Scare PewDiePie and the kind of memey, LOL Network level shitty show. I don't know when it stopped recording. So I'm just gonna say the last 2 minutes of what I said again. It's fucking stopped recording for no reason, okay? I think what YouTube are currently trying to do is eject their position that they hold in the online video market, and they're trying to approach a mainstream like TV channel, which I know is what sounds like I'm telling them to do, but it's not. They're removing all focus from the small creator community made videos, and they're going towards celebrities, which is not what I'm telling them to do. I'm not telling them to pursue celebrities. That's not at all what I said. I'm telling them to encourage local, how do I describe this? I can't say community creators. That just sounds condescending. Like self-made creators who came up through YouTube, like enabling them to take their stuff to a next level that is currently not possible, right? So I know there's not a lot of writing on YouTube, and writing is what I do. And recently I started writing plays just to experiment with plays. And thinking about that, it made me realize I Googled a bunch of plays that I wanted to watch on YouTube. There are no plays on YouTube at all. And it seems like that would be one of the things that YouTube would be good for. Maybe even like a live play on YouTube. Why not, right? You could have the crowd sitting in the audience. That's something Twitch wouldn't do. Maybe it's something YouTube can do. This is all spitballing. I'm making this up as I go along. YouTube movies, I don't think is the way to go. I think like a 10 or 15 minute narrative short series would be amazing. That could be animated or live action. Obviously, the production cost will be lower if it's live action, but animated, you could push that. BoJack Horseman, I think, is the example of something that you want to make on YouTube, right? You don't have to put out a season at one time. You can... Having original shows attracts people to YouTube in a way, I think, in a more enthusiastic way than how they approach YouTube now. Because right now, they approach YouTube as the default option. YouTube right now is like, oh, hey, yeah, I'm bored. What do I do? Oh, yeah, YouTube. I'm going to do that. But then Netflix is something else. Netflix is something you sit down with other people to watch together on the couch, and you make time for Netflix. So YouTube eventually is no longer going to be the default option. I think every single company on the planet right now is working on a video streaming service that's going to come out in the next 12 to 18 months. Fucking Butch Hartman made Fairly Odd Parents. He's going to have his own streaming network for some stupid reason. I can't understand why. I think if you're trying to make a streaming network in 2018, you're too late. Netflix is closed on you. Hulu has closed on you. And there's YouTube right behind those two. YouTube might be bigger than Hulu. I don't know. I'm going to drink some water. Give me a second. So YouTube is going to have a lot more competition because those streaming services have long-form content, which means necessarily that when you sit down to watch that, it's structured in a way that they want you to watch as many episodes as possible because Netflix is looking for watch time too. They just do it in a different way. YouTube do it by having so many videos on so many topics that whatever topic you want to find videos of, chances are they will exist, right? And they push you from one video on that topic to the next, to the next, to the next, until you're falling down a rabbit hole. But the difference between Netflix and YouTube is when you fall down a YouTube rabbit hole, you feel horrible. You feel like you've done nothing. When you fall down a Netflix rabbit hole and you watch all of Wild Wild Country in one day, chances are you feel good. You're like, oh, hey, that show was really nice. I'm so glad I watched that. That's the fundamental difference here, okay? Netflix makes you feel good for watching shit. YouTube makes you feel bad because you know that you're not getting anything out of the YouTube videos that you just watched. You know they're garbage level and you're just watching them or the time that you spent watching them was completely wasted. In Netflix, you're either getting information or something because they have a curated service that's designed to do that. Now, what I'm saying is split the difference, right? YouTube, don't go all the way over there and like remove all the community-made stuff and just focus on curated shit. But introduce a few curated shows. And by few, I don't mean like 3. I don't mean that. I think you should flood the market. But like a small flood, like a controlled flood, like they do for when they make a dam or whatever, right? Have like 100 different creators. So I lost the ending to that. So I'm recording it again. This camera's fucking with me today, but that's fine. What I was trying to say is, instead of having like 2 or 3 shows, give a bunch of money to a bunch of people, right? Take $10 million, split it into $10,000 chunks, and then just sow the field with it, and then see what comes up. That's like the first stage of it. YouTube make like $5 billion a year, I think, is their gross revenue. Now, granted, they might put 90% of that into server costs. I somehow doubt it, but maybe they do. Who knows, right? I'm sure they pay their employees, but they have at least enough to do that like 3 times a year, at least. At minimum. Maybe even more. Probably. Let's be honest. So they have all this money. They take it and they give it to the creators and just see what comes up. Chances are, if you get something artistically relevant, let's say 1 out of the 1,000 shows that you funded becomes successful. It's artistically viable. You submit it to Sundance. It gets in, right? It gets a nice little like jury selection award, something. That's done. That's all it took for you. It took you $10 million to become relevant. That's it. Netflix has been spending billions to get that same relevance. So you have this one movie. You take that and you use that as an example, a shining example of what YouTube can be to attract other creators who are trying to currently make it in Hollywood. Attract those people to your platform. Say, hey, young person, we have the platform. There's the path to being paid here, past just making shitty top 10 videos. There's an artistically fulfilling path to getting paid here. Why don't you go with us? Why do you want to get a Netflix show, right? That's what you're pitching them. Then they write for you. They make stuff that's good, hopefully. Not all of it will be good. Some of it will be good. All of it will be watchable. Make a culture of evaluating these YouTube original shows, right? You can have a whole set of videos around this. All I'm saying is And if you become artistically relevant using this method, you can then use that. You'll get more leeway from the sponsors then, because right now they think of YouTube as a place where it's just ISIS beheading videos and people throwing water on other people in London, right? That's what they think of it as. Change the narrative, make a higher production value like segment of your channel, of your website, and then there will be people who make stuff exclusively for that. So you can be like, hey, you thought we were just these cat videos? We're not. We haven't been that for a while. Now look what we have on this side. We're more relevant to higher production quality content than Amazon Prime. How's that, right? How's that for being a small company, smallish, compared to Amazon anyway? So then you get more leeway from the sponsors because they're willing to go along with it because everything is well critically reviewed. And maybe you don't put ads on every fucking 100 subscriber channel, but that's fine because you're getting this other source of revenue that you're putting not that much money into, right? And the way to do this, I think, is by having creator spaces in as many cities as possible because you want to encourage that local collaboration. You want to encourage that getting to a place and pitching your idea portion. That's what you want to do. You want to have creators involved in a local community because look what it did for Casey Neistat, right? You can have 368. He's going to have a whole stable of creators work coming out of there. And I think that's going to be a model that gets implemented in a bunch of different places. So YouTube, jump the gun. You could have done this 7 years ago. You didn't. You sat on your ass. Get off your ass. Do it now. Make creator spaces all over the world. Encourage local creators to collaborate so you can foster this environment of creativity. And by showing your preference for this and showing that you're putting money into this, which is building up a community of people that make videos better together, right? By encouraging that, you're actively discouraging what we have now, which is a bunch of fucking pranksters hiring actors to say they molested people in public or whatever. You don't want that. That's the shit that makes the sponsors angry. People working together, that's good shit. Fucking Coca-Cola loves that shit. That's what you need. Okay. I'm kind of sad I lost the ending, but I'm kind of happy that I got that in. Okay. Fuck you, YouTube. Subscribe.